Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Amy. Welcome, everybody who's tuning in for our weekly conversation about the arts in our community. I'm so happy to have the fabulous Amy Gilman with us tonight, the director of the Chazen Museum of Art on the UW-Madison campus. I've known you pretty much since you came to Madison a couple of years ago, and you were a fabulous human. I'm thrilled to say that you've recently joined the Forward Board of Directors. Thank you. And I'm so excited for this chance to talk about what's going on at the Chazen. And I'll just remind everybody who's listening at home that we've got Scott here to take care of any questions that you might have. You can share them in the comment section on YouTube or on Facebook. And he can feed those to Amy so that we can answer any questions that you might have. Amy, my sister in running an arts organization during COVID. Tell me, just describe what the first weeks or months were like for you and for your team over at the Chazen as things kind of abruptly shut down.
Sure. So, I think it will come as no surprise to anyone that, basically like we learned on a Monday that we were going to shut down, and we shut down like 45 minutes later, right? So like that was the day that all happened. And then by Wednesday, everybody was working from home. And that part went very smoothly, although the timing of it was still a surprise to us as it was to everybody else. But about 2 to 3 weeks earlier, I had started having conversations with the staff. It turns out that I was early compared to lots of other people about I think everybody should be planning for this. I think maybe we might have to slow things down. It's possible we might have to close for a little while. Let's see how things go, right? So I had sort of started talking with the team about what would it look like for people to have to work from home for 4 to 6 weeks, right? That's I was like, and people looked at me on the staff I was crazy, right? Like, oh, she has completely lost her mind, right? And I just had this instinct that it was going to be worse than people were talking about. And it turned out that I was completely wrong. It was like so much worse than I had ever even imagined. But so we started developing these little plans within the departments for like what would happen if we were offsite, like what projects would everybody work on, and also trying to troubleshoot early things like making sure everybody had a laptop or right. And there's the staff right there. Yeah. Here we all are in our staff meeting that happens every Wednesday, right? And the first one I conducted from my office, right? Still on that first Wednesday, and had every technical problem in the book. And, now it just feels like such old hat. So that part actually went fairly smoothly. But one of the challenges, because we are such a forward-facing and visitor-facing organization, is it's one thing to say to the curators, look, you're going to be working from home for a while, and you're going to be doing your research, and you're going to be working on acquisitions. You're doing all the things that you normally do. You're just not going to be doing it from your office at the museum. It's another thing to say to the visitor services staff, for example, what are we, what will we do, right, that can really add value to the work that you do for the museum in the long term and really keep you engaged in a meaningful way. And that's where I feel like the staff did this really incredible job very early on of brainstorming on the kinds of things that they could do while we are away, right? And so there was a lot of professional development, and some of them took courses on art history because they hadn't had them, and they started thinking about visitor services from different standpoints, and they're doing these readings together. I mean, they're sort of thinking about it in a way that now my perspective is that wasn't just about engaging them for this period where we can't be present in the museum. It was actually investing in what we will be when we all come back, right? And whatever that's going to look like, right? We're back now in a small way, but that's going to pay some real dividends in the long term, is that investment in letting people just really dig into some topics. And so, you know, the museum was empty. Everything's been locked down. The chief curator and I would alternate going in on a Tuesday or a Friday and like walk the museum. I mean, there's security in there, right? But like we're checking on certain things, and that was eerie, especially those first couple months, right? Where like it's dark, no one's there, no one's been there. It's just was so strange because the objects really require people to be complete, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we do what we do, right? It's like it doesn't work without the audience, right? And as a theater, right? I mean, and so this shot here is of the Speaking of Book Art show. So everything that was up when we had to close down is now up. You know, it was supposed to finish in May, and now it's still up because well, we haven't been in the building very much, but you can just imagine, right? Like all the lights are dark, all the curtains are drawn, like everything is. It feels bereft, right? When you're in there without any visitors or staff or anything like that. So it's been a very odd time. I mean, that's probably like the understatement of the century, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, I realized I jumped in immediately to hear all about how you were handling COVID, and I'm so impressed and fascinated with what you're describing in terms of the proactive work your staff's been doing. But let's just take a step back and just talk about sort of what brought you to Madison and, you know, what you've been focused on in leading the Chazen during your tenure here so far.
Sure, thanks. So, you know, when you and I met, I think it was within like, I don't know, maybe 2 months of my first being here. So Jane Coleman, great supporter of yours,
Love
is
her.
is on the Chazen Council, the advisory council. And so I came here in the fall of 2017, in September 2017, from the Toledo Museum of Art, where I had been for 12 years, and really came here in part because the collection is so spectacular at the museum. I mean, it's a really amazing university collection, and also because the buildings are so wonderful, and it's actually has a tremendous amount of space, which is often unusual in a university art museum, is to have not just a tremendous amount of great gallery space, but actually on very public, right? So right there on University Avenue. And one of the things that was interesting to me, because I never thought I would be at a university art museum, I'm not a particularly academic curator. I loved being at a big public museum, big civic museum, is that engagement with the community and visitors. And so one of the things that I thought was wonderful about coming here was that the Chazen itself is physically a gateway to the campus. And it is one of the things that lives both in campus, nested within campus, and as part of the community. And it is one of those spaces that is actually sort of intersectional for the community. And I really love that kind of space, right? It's like being in that space. And, you know, coming here, we really focused for the first couple of years on identifying like what were we really going to emphasize as core values for the museum. And last fall, we radically expanded the museum's hours, right? So September of 2019, we became open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that was a great experiment. And it was going gangbusters. I mean, it's been terrific, right? And who would have predicted that my doubling down on open hours, right, was going to be like the thing that I was, you know, by the end of the year, I was not going to be able to accomplish at all, right? Like all of a sudden, it's all gone. So, but we've been learning so much about how to engage our communities, and that's the Madison community, and it's the university writ large, right? So the museum is not really intended to just serve a portion of the campus. It's the University Art Museum. It is supposed to serve the entire campus of the university. And how do we make that more accessible to people and invite more people in. And the great experiment of the coffee shop and the hours was like our first salvo in there. And now what we're doing is really starting to talk about, we think we're going to get back to those hours eventually, but who knows when that will be. But in the meantime, how do we live those values in the ways that are possible now, right? Rather than just like aim to get back to where we were, as if where we were was like, perfect, and it wasn't. So
I love that so much, because I feel like that is exactly the conversation we've been having here at Forward since this started. How do we live our values within the realm of what's currently possible? Yeah. Right? Because it's not like, oh, well, just stretch the boundaries of what's possible. We're talking about a public health emergency. So it's not what we can afford. It's not about what a union will allow us to do. It's about what's safe for people. But within that, to go back to your base values and how can you focus on that? I love hearing you articulate it that way.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we've really enjoyed doing, so when we shut down, and of course, all of a sudden, this incredible pressure on our communications team, because they become the sole vehicle, right, for us to communicate and to engage with our audience, right? And we did ramp up certain things right away in terms of postings and things like that, but we actually took some time. And there are museums that were like immediately like pushing all of their educational materials online, and that's great. Some of them have huge resources and they can do that. But we actually decided to take a little bit of time, and it really was not until about 4 to 5 weeks in that we started some of the programming that is now continuing online, where whether it's marketing driven, where they have something like this, which happens every other Friday, or another program is called Our Kind of Happy Hour, which happens on every other Wednesday evening at about this time, right? Where they get artists to talk about things. And that really took the team, and especially the education team, just like really allowing themselves some time to conceive of what a thoughtful program would look like for the public in this kind of format.
Right.
Not what can we do, but also like what should we be doing and what are some of the unique things about this format that we can leverage. And this is probably going to change our in-person programming, right? Like going into the future, right? Because some of these experiments are things that we will 100% continue because it actually provides access in different ways. And, when we think about like the Wisconsin idea, right, that we're supposed to also be serving like the whole state, it's like actually being able to stream some of the programming and like meaningful conversations in a way like allows people to tune in from all over the world, right? And certainly from all over Wisconsin, so many of whom cannot visit us in person.
I love that. So I know that you're starting very slowly on a reopening journey. So describe the ways in which people can experience the Chazen in person right now.
Sure. So we have started very conservatively as part of the slow reopening of the university. And so right now we are open Tuesday through Friday from 12 until 5. And each hour you can go onto the museum's webpage, or if you're very familiar with Eventbrite, that's the reservation system that we're using. And you can go in and you can sign up for a 45-minute slot that starts on the hour, where you can come into the museum, and we are capping that at 25 people, right? Wow. So, and we're also, just to be totally like transparent, we're not just conservative about the hours and conservative about the numbers, is that we're only right now having the first floor and the second floor of the Chazen building open, because that's actually what we can physically support at the moment, right? Because once everything shuts down, right, like we have to ramp up custodial again. There's like all these things that are off the walls. I mean, there's all kinds of things the whole mechanism that has to happen. And in the meantime, we, like everyone, is trying to figure out how to do this in a way that feels safe for visitors and feels safe for the staff.
Right.
Right. So yeah, you can see this here. There's a a sign up for, you can select the date and you can go in and you can go in, sign up for 12 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. And you know that it will only be you, your group, and all the way up to about 25 people in the museum maximum. And it started off pretty slowly. There's people every day, but we're not maxing out our numbers yet. That is totally fine.
Mhm.
Numbers are not the goal. The goal is to allow ourselves to get used to this. And then as it makes sense, right, we will open up more or more hours. Right?
I love that. I'm so glad that that the rollout is smooth. That, like you said, slow is fine.
So it's totally okay. I mean, I think we were all a little worried that when we sort of put it out there that there would be this like mini rush, right? To
Right.
like get to, but I also think that I had sort of forgotten, like, we're all in the same space. Actually, people are being very cautious and they think they should be, right?
Right.
Um, so we want people to come and we want them to feel safe doing it. And part of that is also just us getting used to, like, how do we greet people in the building in this way? And the kinds of signage you need in like nowadays to be able to like let people know about all the different rules and things like that. So yeah, it's just it's a process, right? It's a process.
So with the caveat that, again, I know as well as you do, so much beyond any of our control in terms of how the future looks. But what are you thinking about? What are the main things that you and your staff are considering as you contemplate the fall and the return of at least a good chunk of the student body to campus and what that might look like?
Sure. So probably the most important part of what we've decided to do over the summer is something that it's related to something I've been thinking about since I arrived here, which is how can the museum better engage with and support faculty and teaching and learning at the university, right? And so this isn't really about the public side of the museum, but this is really about basically once we shut down, and I started doing a lot of thinking about like how can the museum really demonstrate value, right, to during an incredibly stressful period, not just in what people would think, which is like we are a place of contemplation, we are a place where people can come and like breathe a little bit in terms of space in their heads and things like that, but also it's such a challenging time to teach and to be a student, and faculty are like really trying to figure out how to provide a rich experience for students in the fall, right? And so we've started this initiative where we are asking. I've asked Catherine Alkauskas, who's our chief curator, and Candy Waterloo, who's our curator of education, to co-lead a process whereby we are taking groups of Chazen permanent collection objects, a small group of them, and also connecting them to themes that are related to the university's Go Big Read book for this year, which is called Parkland, right? So it's about the Parkland, the students in Parkland who then have led this incredible movement, right? And so we are, and there's a lot of faculty from all over the university that teach, that will teach using Parkland, and a number of Wisconsin Experience courses. And so we really just wanted to like find a way of, if you can come in person, most of the work will be installed, right? But if you're teaching digitally, right, then we will give you images, we will give you content, we will give you videos, we will give you material that could certainly encompass at least like a week of engagement with your class around some of the themes that are related to this that could be usable in a lot of different ways. And this is a real experiment for us to do this, right? And what I hope is that this will become something that we add on to each semester, that we add themes and we add content and we allow and we get feedback from faculty about what works and what doesn't, and that we are able to adjust, because then when we really are back open again in a really full way, there will be a whole broader constituency of faculty and students who have actually engaged with the museum in a way that I hope will will really keep them connected to us, and will then have them want to come in and use the museum in richer ways than maybe they have in the past.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, as you're saying there, I'm really hoping that there are some new programs and practices that all of our organizations, and not just nonprofit arts organizations, but all of us, things that we learned during this time that help us lead, better lives.
But don't you think that part of the opportunity here is to stop and we talk about this all the time. What are the things we're going to stop doing? Right. Let's slow down and think about oh, we're gonna stop this and we're gonna move forward with this, but that never happens.
Time for that, yeah.
Right, because the world does not stop, right? And we never stop doing what we're doing. So part of the gift of this horrifying period is this gift of it's not just a gift of time, because I certainly don't feel like I have had a lot of time to think, right? But it is it streamlines some decision making about what is actually mission critical for us as an organization, and everything else just needs to go right now. Right? And when we restart, we are, and I've talked to many people on my team about this, is when we restart things, the goal is not to restart the way we were. If we do that, that has to be a deliberate choice. The goal is to restart how we want to be doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So if there were changes we needed to make, and we've been, waffling on them, or saying in a couple of years we'll do this, whatever. No, now is the time. If we're going to make changes, now is the time to do it. And that is that again, that never happens. So it is actually it is a great time to be able to just engage in just really thinking so hard about how what each thing that we do is connected to what we are supposed to be doing.
Yeah. It's so true, because we get, in these arts organizations, or really any nonprofit, we're working so hard all the time, and you've got the programs that have been going for a long time, and the programs you've been trying to start, and you're just, it's this constant in the trenches mentality. And, we've all been forcibly knocked off course.
Yeah.
And it does allow you to look at everything and go, well, if we were afraid to make a change because we or our audiences or our patrons were in a particular habit, they were used to something, and we don't want to take it away because everybody's used to it, even if we started to question the long-term value of it. Well, everyone's getting used to new normals, and that's that way of looking at it.
Yeah, and it's the museum field. I don't know if this is true in theaters, but the museum field, it's it is practically just this adage to know that somebody started this program in 1985, and then they never stopped it. Right? They just nobody's evaluating whether or not it's actually serving the audience anymore, or whether it should change with the times. Museums are great at starting these things and then just being okay, so for the next generation, right? We are that's what we're doing.
Right. I love that. This is a very specific question, but do you have a particular piece of art or gallery or corner of the Chazen that is really special to you, a personal favorite?
So I don't actually have a personal favorite, but I do have a habit that I do, that I did even when even during COVID, when I'm walking around and looking to make sure there's no water leaks or anything like that, which is that I do like to do a little bit of discovering things that I've been in every gallery thousands of times now. Looking closely at an object in a way that I had not before, and allowing myself to rediscover that object. Or in some cases, how did I miss this object? It's been here the whole time I have worked in this building, right? And so there's these really charming, and I wish I had thought about this before I could actually so we don't have a picture of this, but there's incredibly charming single circus figures that are like maquettes for, I think, a larger sculpture that are in one of the galleries. And I've never really looked closely at them. They're actually like so painterly, and they're very simply constructed, but they're also like they're extremely gestural and performative and all of this. And I probably spent like 20 minutes just looking at these three little things, and they're all like this big, right? So I do find myself like having what we call like a Chazen moment, right? Like every day that we're able to be in the building.
While we've been talking, I've been thinking that I've got to make one of those appointments to bring my teenagers down before everyone's back to school, whatever that is.
Right. Right.
So I'll look for the circus figures.
Good.
Is there? We're sort of coming around to the end of our time. Is there anything else that you want to make sure listeners know about things happening at the Chazen? Any online content you want to steer people towards?
Well, I hope that everybody who's listening in here has is connected to us on social media so that we can communicate with you if you're interested. But one of the things I just wanted to mention, because I think it's so valuable for like you and I to have these kinds of conversations, and just for us to be connected, right? Because so many people tend to think like, okay, like art museums are in this category over here, and like theater is in this category over here, and they're all arts, right? But they're not necessarily related to each other. And so often I just think that there's so much richness to us being able to like cross-pollinate a little bit ideas, right? Things that, and one of the reasons why I was so interested in being part of Forward and joining the board was that is totally selfish on my part, right? Like I fully intend to appropriate interesting things that you all are thinking about, right? That are not the way museums tend to think of themselves, right? So I know all about how museums work, but it's really important for us as leaders to like get input from other disciplines, right? Because we can learn a lot from that. And I wouldn't have any clue as to how to run a theater, but I do also think that like there are probably some things that we are doing or that we're thinking about or that museums are doing that are really relevant to what you guys are also thinking about. So it's just something, I'm just so glad to be invited.
I agree with everything you just said. And I certainly know that for our company, some of the most fun experiences we've had the last couple of years are the free public play readings we've done in your galleries.
Oh yeah, they've been wonderful. And I think we've had two of them, I think. Is that right? Yeah.
December of 18 and December of 19.
That's right.
And huge turnouts. And we've done these public free play readings in lots of different locations and libraries and community centers, but doing it in a gallery surrounded by all of this art, it does add a completely different vibe to the whole experience. And it was so...
And it's not intended to be like the same as doing it in a theater, right? Like it should be just like, it's intended to feel different, and it does. But it's rich in a different way.
Well, December 2020 is probably not in the cards, but
probably
21.
21, we're on.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I love any chance to talk to you. And this has been a wonderful one. And I do want to mention to everybody listening, for the first time since late March of this year, we're going to be putting Tuesdays with Forward on a 2-week hiatus, so that I can take a quick little getaway, and Scott Hayden can take a quick little getaway. And a little pause and a little breath before we jump back into all of the fall season, whatever that looks like. So our next episode, I guess they're episodes, is going to be on August 18th, because we're going to skip the next 2 Tuesdays. So we'll miss you, but we'll be back. Thank you for being with us and listening to this. Thank you, Amy. I'll see you at the board meeting Zooms, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Scott. And be well, everybody. Stay safe. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.